This is the Buried in Work podcast, where we share tips and interview experts to help you simplify estate planning and end-of-life tasks.
I'm your host, Adam Zuckerman, and today we have a very special guest. That's Bill Edgar. He's also known as the Coffin Confessor. He may actually be the only Coffin Confessor in the world. Now, Bill's got a neat story. He's an author, a unique professional from Australia who takes the requests of dying, ensuring that their secrets are revealed and their final wishes are fulfilled at their funerals. Now, he's been many things in life. He is the son of one of Australia's most notorious gangsters. He was a homeless street kid. He's even a maximum security prisoner, which I'm really curious about. But he's also a family man and someone who wants to make sure that people in their final moments on Earth around other people are heard and have their stories told. With that, let's get into it. We may have a little bit of cursing. If that's not something that you're into, please listen to another episode. But with that, Bill, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Now, let's just hop in. What the heck is a coffin confessor?
A coffin confessor is someone that's hired by the deceased before they die to crash their funeral and tell those that were loved how much they were loved and those my clients love to hate to fuck off.
How? Why? What's the background story?
I'm a private investigator, and I was investigating some financial claims for a gentleman that was on his deathbed. And we started speaking about life, death, and everything in between. And, I suggested he do a eulogy for himself. But he said he'd been to a number of funerals where the eulogy isn't played because, people get to view it before the funeral and they go, oh, no, we're not going to play that at the funeral. It's too harsh, it's just disrespectful for those left behind. So as a joke, and it was only a joke, I said, I could always crash your funeral for you. And he took me up on the offer and that rolled and it just went from one funeral to another and then doors just kept opening.
That's fantastic. Now, what year was this?
2018. And then it progressed through 2019, early 20, and then COVID came and no one had a funeral. No one was allowed to go to funerals. So I ended up doing virtual funeral crashes, which was pretty cool. So I did a couple of those.
So when somebody wants to find you, is the conversation pretty serious? Is it, hey, I know I'm at a terminal point in my life, or is it long in advance? I just have some messages and I'd like you to do this as a gag. What's the general dialogue?
Yeah, at the start it was those close to death knocking on death's door, but then as it evolved, it was people that, and I think COVID helped a lot because people started thinking about their own mortality and what was going on around them and what they really wanted when they leave. And it was one of those things that I ended up with thousands of requests from around the world and people just saying, look, I'm not even close to death, but I'd like to put something in place. Can you help me? Or, what can we do? And so that became something that I was bombarded with. And I thought, wow, this is niche and it's unique. And it's something that I didn't realize that people actually wanted and needed.
Wait, thousands of people from around the world are reaching out. So you literally, from the beginning of day, 8 a.m., let's say you wake up to the time you go to sleep, you could be doing this nonstop if you wanted.
It's not a daily job. It's a daily job replying to everybody, and doing things like that. But funerals, so let's say since 2018, there's been, say, 50 to 60 funeral crashes, but then there's will readings, there's going to the viewings and pinpricking the body in case, and that's a request that somebody wanted. They wanted their body pinpricked because they were petrified of being cremated alive. I place mobile phones in coffins or antiques or photos, whatever anybody wants. Then I do home sweeps where I go to people's homes and I clear out items that they don't want their family and friends to find because they're a bit, uneasy about them people finding it, and seeing what they're up to. And now I'm delivering gifts from the afterlife, which is really cool. I enjoy that too.
That's neat. All right. So if somebody wants to engage you for the digital sweep or the home sweep, you have an agreement in place. You find out that they passed, which I'm curious to learn how you actually find out that they did pass, because all this is obviously somewhat sensitive. Do you have the key to their house and you just walk in?
Yeah, so it's always when it's prior to them passing that I do the home sweeps. So I had no idea, and it's quite common. For the life of me, I didn't realize that so many people, elderly people, can have a fall at home, get taken to hospital and get told they'll never go back home. And I thought, wow, and it was quite common. So, it's those people that ask me to go to their home. They give me the keys or they let me know a way to get in. I have a video with them and a contract with them. So I can't be litigated. I go to their home and I remove those sensitive items and I either return them back to my client or they're incinerated on my property.
Instructions. Now that resonates. So a long time ago, I had my tonsils taken out, and unfortunately, when they cauterized my throat, it didn't cauterize all the way. So I was squirting blood out of my throat several feet, and I had to go back to the hospital a few different times. And finally, they said we need to recauterize. We have to put you back under. And my sister was going to fly in for the procedure to take care of me for a day or two after. But my apartment was an absolute disaster. This is back when I was in grad school. So I asked if I could go home because I knew that it wasn't a constant stream of blood. It would start and then stop. And they said, absolutely not. And I noticed that people are taking cigarette breaks. So I asked for a cigarette break, even though they knew that I didn't smoke. And I went home over the cigarette break to clean up the house, to run back, to then have the procedure. So you would have been the perfect person.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. So, you ran home to get rid of whatever it was or to clean up for your sister or, these people are the same. They have certain items. Lately, it's been sexual items that they don't want their family and friends to find. They want them incinerated. So, that's a job I do.
All right. I think that's fantastic. We can talk about franchises in a bit. When you go to a funeral, do you typically know what you're going to say beforehand? Are you rehearsing like an actor and you put on different voices or come in a costume? What do you do?
No. So I attend the funeral as one of the mourners. I sit amongst family or friends. A specific time set up between me and my client. I'll stand up and I'll excuse myself and I say, excuse me, my name's Bill Edgar. I am the Coffin Confessor. Sit down, shut up or fuck off. The person in the coffin's got something to say and this is what it is. Now I'll open an envelope and I'll read exactly what they've wrote, in their message. It's not me. I'm not talking about me or my life. It's their life and it's what they've written. It's their words. I am purely the messenger. That's all I am.
And the letter is the first time. So it's always a letter? I'm assuming then it has to be verbatim?
Yeah, it does. It has to be that way. So that way there's, not only clarity of what I've got to do. Sometimes I may open the letter prior to the funeral and read it so I get the gist of what's going on. Other times I like the experience of not knowing as well. So it's a bit of a surprise to me too.
What is the tenor of the messages? Is it generally, thank you, loved ones, I'm glad that you're here? Or is it, John, you're an ass and I don't like you. I wish you weren't here and you came even though you shouldn't have?
Yeah, it's a range of good, bad, funny and sad. I mean, there's a lot of times where I've stood up and I've actually asked members of the congregation to stand up and fuck off because my client hadn't seen them in 30 years. And it could be a brother, a sister, a mother, it could be anybody. And why are they there paying their respects now when they could have seen my client in the 30 years, So there's a lot of vultures in families. I didn't realize that in the early days. I thought, yeah, there's a vulture or two hanging around, but there are a lot. And I've got this thing where there's a will, there's a relative.
Yeah, most people imagine the will reading of a dark, rich mahogany room with leather, and an attorney walks in. We'll have the reading of the will, but that's when everybody comes out to hear, and it just doesn't really happen that way.
No, it doesn't. No.
All right, so you're there. You stand up. Do you walk to the dais? You grab a microphone, or you're just speaking and projecting from where you are?
Depends. It depends on the crowd, how big the crowd is. Sometimes I might have to grab the microphone or stand up at the dais, or a lot of times I'll stand, in front of the coffin or beside the coffin, and I'll speak exactly what my clients want. Sometimes there's interjections. However, everybody that's there, they want to hear what their loved one left unsaid. That they thrive on it. They need to know, So those people that may ask me to sit down or go away myself, I'll tell them, I say, look, this is your loved one laying there. It's their message. It's their funeral, not your funeral. Fuck off. How about we listen to what they've got to say? And the crowd's on my side. So, yeah.
So you've got the crowd behind you. For people that are just listening on the podcast, you can't see the video as well. You can come and find us online. But Bill, you're a pretty hefty guy. You look like you're in shape and you work out. Not fat, but like you look like you got broad shoulders to you. Anybody ever tried to take a swing?
Not a swing, but there's been a couple of incidents where, I did a bikie's funeral, and they said that if they didn't like what they heard, then I was going in the grave with him. Um, so you get your idle threat. But again, the people that truly know these people that have died and really love them, they already know. They know the secrets, or they know what's going on. And for instance, like the first funeral I ever did for Graham was his name. His best mate was trying to screw his wife. And for me to get up and say, hey, listen, sit down, shut up, or fuck off. You've been trying to screw this man's wife. How about you fuck off? You're not a best mate. And it was quite good because I have evidence. Every time someone reaches out to me and they got a claim or something that they need me to crash or do, as a private investigator, I like to investigate those claims. So I'm not going to destroy anybody, out of turn. It's done properly.
All right. So it's the proper retribution and truth in statement. Is there an opportunity for people to rebut? Now we're going to like a court of law of, I have not done this, and people get embarrassed and there's a back and forth. It's like, well, actually, Mark here says that he knew you would say this, and I am reading his response to you because he knows that you're going to say something.
Yeah, there probably is, but not with me because I'm there for my client only. And once I do what I've done, I walk out. So I don't know if the funeral even continues. I've done what I've done. I've dropped the bomb and I leave. I have no care or concern for those left behind. It's not about them. It's about my client.
All right. I respect that. Now, how many total, I know you mentioned earlier, but to give listeners a review, how many total have you done so far?
In funeral crashes, around 58. So in total jobs, probably in excess of just under 200, I'd say.
So you've done nearly 60 funeral crashes. You have your book. You're starting to get a little bit more well known, I think. Possibly more so in voice than in facial recognition. Have you?
That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was the question: have you been recognized yet? Or are you going to have to start putting on disguises where you've got the sunglasses and the hat? You do the mass unveiling.
No, I'll never hide my identity, but I do like the way that I can turn up to a funeral nowadays, and those people that shouldn't be there leave because they know they're going to be targeted or they feel they may be targeted. So they leave, and it makes my job a lot easier. So I'm happy to do that. But like I say, it's a range of good, bad, funny, and sad. I love doing the loving ones as well. They're quite cool. So, there's a range.
Yeah. Do you think that you're uniquely positioned to do this? You've had some really interesting experiences from your childhood and your family growing up.
Yeah, it's a job not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. And I believe that I was set up to do the job from my childhood, which I never had. I mean, that was stolen from me from the age of 7. So I never really had a childhood, and everything that happened in my life has built up to around me to be able to do what I do. I mean, it's not... crashing a funeral, I'd never thought in my life would have been, something that I'd do. However, once you meet the vultures in families, and once you meet the disgruntled, and then sit with the people that are actually passing over, and they're beautiful, and I thought, yeah, this needs to be done. I'm doing it.
Yeah, yeah. You have this way of narration. You clearly have a purpose in what you're doing and you believe in what you're doing. Why is it so important for you to help people tell their stories even after they've passed? Most people, they don't want to get involved, but it seems like this is almost a calling for you. Why?
No one listened to me. No one ever listened to me when I was younger. I'd yell, shout, kick, scream, do everything I could to bring out what was happening to me. And I was always silenced, or I wasn't listened to, or I was incarcerated, or I was, called a liar for years, and it's an abomination of what happened to me as a child. I mean, like, I fought the Anglican Church, I fought for 35 years. And in September 2023, the Anglican Church finally came forward and said, you know what? We're sorry. It happened. We don't apologize for the people that did it because we're not them. but we do recognise it happened and we're going to offer you a settlement. Now, I didn't want the settlement. It wasn't the settlement. I wanted justice. And in Queensland, in Australia, you are forced to take the settlement. You aren't forced to get justice unless you go through the court system. Now, if you go through the court system in Australia, the chances of winning are very slim. And even if you do win, the church will keep it going and going so you don't get anything anyway, and the perpetrators keep being free. So, at the end of the day, you're forced to take settlement. I took the settlement, and but I wouldn't put a gag. I wouldn't, agree to a gag order or anything like that. So, at the end of the day, I believe, yes, I was set up for this job. Yes, I believe that I stand for those that were silenced or haven't got a voice, and I like to stand up for those for sure.
Mm-hmm. What ethical considerations come into play? And you clearly have taken a challenging, and challenging is probably just the tip of the iceberg there in the life that you've lived up into this point where you find yourself. How have you taken all of your life experiences and turned it into an ethical consideration when you're revealing secrets? Is there anything that you have to think about that people might not think of because they aren't the Coffin Confessor?
I guess in some ways there are. Look, at the end of the day, my integrity is everything. It really is. I hold their secrets, their desires, their wishes, their fantasies, very, very dearly. And I hold them until the day that they depart. And I have to think about, what these people are saying in the letter that I've got to read out. And I'll sit with them and we'll go through the letter. And let's say, for instance, Joe Bloggs says, oh, look, I slept with my neighbour and she got pregnant and aborted the child. Right. Now, I'm not going to get up on stage and say, hey, listen, he screwed his neighbour, got pregnant, and the neighbour's married with kids anyway. That would ruin her life. So I'll say to him, let's do it in a different way. I know you want revenge or you want to go out of the world with a bit of a bang, but let's just say you slept with a neighbour. You live in apartment blocks. It could be man or woman, it could be any neighbour. Let's just say they did get pregnant. Okay, no problem. And let's leave it at that. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to leave destroying somebody's life. And so I'll try to convince them to, obviously let the skeletons out of the closet, but let them out in a way that it's not going to be detrimental to the other people left behind, unless there's actual evidence and proof that I can see that that person was absolutely chaotic or abusive or something like that.
That, in a way, puts you in a role of arbiter, of juror, of judge. That's a lot of weight. In a weird way, that also makes you a therapist of trying to help them work through things beforehand. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I've sort of become a concierge for the dead. It's really it's unique, and I guess I handle it in a way that I look at my own mortality, my own life, and how I've gone about doing what I've done. And I've written 2 books, and I did that purposely because Penguin Random House Australia came to me and they said, look, this is a fascinating story. You've got to write a book. And I thought, okay, I could write a book about crashing funerals, not a problem. Then they came to me and they said, you know what? You might need to put everything on the table because someone's going to come forward and say, hey, you've got secrets yourself. And I thought, okay, well, if I do that, they're pretty dark, deep-seated secrets, and they're going to hurt a lot of people in the way that they're going to read them and it might trigger them. And like Penguin said, that's collateral damage. That's what's going to happen with anybody that reads another person's story. There's triggers. So I decided then and then I was going to put everything on the table, and no one could ever come forward and say I've done something that I hadn't, because I'd already written about it. So,
and let's give you the plug there. If people want to find either of the books, where can they go? What are they titled?
The first book's called The Coffin Confessor. You can buy both books anywhere, Amazon, all over the world at the moment. And the second book is titled The Afterlife Confessional, which came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's just going nuts at the moment, which I'm really happy about. But both books are great. Yeah.
Oh, we'll definitely put the links to them in the show notes as well.
Great.
Advice for the dying. So you've had a unique experience where most people in their lives don't have the chance to speak to people when they know that things are about to end. It's the death doulas, the healthcare workers, but generally not everyday people in their lives. It's something that we oftentimes even protect ourselves from. What advice
Yeah.
do you Yeah, what advice do you have for those individuals that are nearing the end of their life? They have unresolved matters or secrets that they want to address because not everybody has a you.
No, exactly. And it, it's mind-boggling to think that these people that are so close to death, they don't get the visitors that you think that they would. There's only a handful of people that come and see them, and then all of a sudden, there's a lot of people that'll go, "Oh, did they die? Oh, I'm sad to hear that." But you didn't reach out, but you knew them. You might have saw a friend's post on Facebook or social media, and all of a sudden, we live by social media. I mean, there's friends out there that you haven't seen in 12 months, but they're fine. They're doing well because you see them on social media. But how good are they? How happy are they? Have you ever reached out to them in that 12 months? Not really, because you see them every day, or you might see them every week on social media. Same sort of thing with somebody dying, although it's more prevalent, I guess, because when that person's died, you sit there and you go, fuck, I should have reached out. What a dick. Why didn't I go and see that person, And these people that are laying on their deathbed, they're going, wow, no one cares. Well, they do, but it's just a different care. It's a way, it's a harsh road, the knocking on death's door. It's a terrible road to travel. And we're all going, though. That's the thing. Every one of us are going to go. And it's not until you realize that, doesn't matter what you do, what you say, death will come. Yeah. It's coming, and it's coming for all of us. So, yeah.
Death and taxes, and you can't take your things with you, per se.
Well, you can't, although I did have one gentleman that did.
What do you mean?
Funny enough. So last year, a gentleman came to me and says, I've got some very toxic family members and they want everything I own. I've tried to get rid of a lot of those things, charities and this and that, but I've got a couple of valuable items that I want to take with me, but I want you to bury them somewhere that no one will ever find them. And I thought, well, when am I ever going to bury them where no one will ever find them? And it came to me at another funeral one day. And I thought, I know where to bury him. So I jumped in his grave, dug a hole, put the box in there, waited for the funeral. His casket got lowered on that hole, and then it all got buried in. So he took him with him.
You effectively made a tomb. Amazing.
I did. A tomb within a tomb, yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
What are your plans for the future? Are you going to keep up coffin confessing?
I believe so. At this stage, I've got, there's probably 100 people out there that want me to franchise and turn it into a business and do all these things around the world. And I've got to say, from my experience, it is so easy to manipulate and rip off the dead. It really is, because I get paid in a trust prior to them dying. That money's released upon their funeral. Now, I can't see a way that people wouldn't, steal from the dead. I mean, it's probably the worst thing you could do, but it could be done, and quite easily. You could take money off somebody and just not turn up, not do the job. Who's going to know it?
Wow.
And it's something that
notified? How are you notified when somebody passes? So
there's always somebody that knows that I'm engaged. They don't know what I'm going to do. They have no idea what I'm going to do, say, or anything like that. But they know I'm engaged. Now, it could be, most recently, it's been a palliative care nurse that'll call me up and they say, Joe Bloggs has died. And I'll say, that's unfortunate and sad to hear. And they'll let me know all the details, everything. It's not hard to find out when a funeral is here in Australia. It's posted in the papers as well as social media. That person's died and they're having a funeral at so and so and where. So it's always somebody that knows. I mean, it's if a husband's hired me, most recently this guy's hired me, and his wife has been notified that I'm going to be there, and she's like, well, what's he going to say? And the husband will say, well, that's a secret. That's for you to find out later on, and she'll go, I'm going to make sure he's not there when you die, and nothing will stop me. I'm engaged by the deceased, so I can't be stopped. Only they can stop me.
And the funerals have been canceled when they hear that you're involved. It's a
well, then it's a face-to-face. So I'll do a face-to-face. I'll knock on someone's door and I'll say, excuse me, my name's Bill Edgar. I am the Coffin Confessor. This is a message from Derek, who died last week. His message is, you're an absolute prick. you know, or I loved you so much, you know what I mean? Whatever it is.
How much does it cost?
I charge between $2,000 and $10,000 a gig, but they don't need the money where they're going, and I never get a complaint.
No. Why the range? Is it travel? Is it?
Yeah, it's travel, and if it's just placing items in coffins or going to viewings or, you know, a will reading, something like that. Yeah, there's a range. You know, the 10,000 is to crash a funeral, and it's within Australia. If I go overseas, it's obviously it's a bit more for the travel, accommodation, and back. You know, I do this on a global scale now, but you know, it's one of those things that it's just evolved in a way that I had no idea it would. And I had no idea. Another thing that's just come recently is the number of maximum security prisoners around the planet that are reaching out and saying, listen, if I confess to a crime, what happens? And I'll say to them, look, if you confess to a crime, I've got to report it if I know about it. However, if you write it down, post it to me, and I don't open it till your funeral, I don't know what the crime is either until that day, and then it'll be reported.
And it's a federal crime for someone to open that mail up.
Exactly.
Unless they have a knowledge
a court
of
order.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
Though there are some instances where prisons can open mail for screening purposes, but
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Now, Bill, you've gone on a tour. You've been a TEDx speaker, a TED speaker, 2 books, numerous radio shows, podcasts, newspapers, you name it. People ask you things all the time. What are a few of the questions that you wish people actually asked you that you don't get enough? What do people need to know?
I guess one of the questions is that no one's really asked is what's the meaning of life? You know, no one's ever said, hey, Bill, what's your meaning of life? And I've got to be honest with you, my meaning of life is to avoid death as long as you can. You know, keep running, keep moving, you know. And that's something I tell a lot of people, especially elderly people, because a lot of them already know once you stop, you're dead. You've got to keep moving. Even if you retire and you think, oh, that's great, sit back and do nothing. No, you've got to keep moving, always moving, you know. And the other thing is preparation. People will say, well, you know, what has it done for you, the Coffin Confessor? And I'll let them know, oh, yeah, I've lived a great life. It's transformed my life, and I get to see people at their best and worst, you know. But I don't get asked, like, what have you got in store? I mean, obviously for my funeral, they'll ask me that, but what have I got in store for their life from now on? And I'll say to them to prepare. Mm-hmm. I prepare for my death and the death of a loved one, not meaning that I'm not going to mourn and be upset about it, but I'm prepared now more so than ever, because I used to always think about death in a way that, oh, I'd be devastated if I lost my wife and I don't know what I'd do. Whereas now, it's going to happen. It's going to happen anyway. You know, so I guess I've become, it's reality for me that it's going to happen, and I'm going to prepare myself now before it happens, so that way when it does happen, I'm at a better standing and understanding.
Do you have a confessor for you?
I've been working on something for the last year and a half now, and it will be, I'm doing holograms. I'm looking into that at the moment, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I was actually, the last time I was in Australia, I got engaged at Three Sisters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Live in the States, got engaged at Three Sisters, and I haven't been back since. But if you need someone that no one will recognize, because I don't go to Australia often, you give me a call. I'm your guy.
Not a problem at all. I haven't got any secrets left, but I mean, it would be cool. I mean, I do need someone to put some fireworks in my coffin before it goes into the furnace.
I'm your guy, man. I'm your guy.
Sweet.
Bill says that he has nothing to say to anybody, and you're all quite disappointed right now.
And you can all get fucked. See ya.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in.
Yeah, beautiful.
All right, Bill. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a great conversation and wraps up another Buried in Work podcast episode where we feature tips and stories from industry professionals like Bill, who is the Coffin Confessor, and those who specialize in making estate planning, end-of-life tasks, and estate transitions more manageable. If you enjoyed the podcast, leave a review, follow us on social media, visit us at buriedinwork.com. You can find Bill at thecoffinconfessor.com. And don't forget, if you're a listener, save 10% off our products online. Come check them out. Code's BIW Podcast. Bill, thanks again. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me, and hi to all your listeners. Take care, mate.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Buried in Work podcast. Remember, you can save 10% on our estate preparation package and games with code podcast10 at buriedinwork.com.